Do you think that the U.S. provoked Russia through its operations in Ukraine?
I think what provoked Russia was our failure to withdraw effectively from Afghanistan, and we were so feckless, and it was such. Now, that's not to criticize anybody that was on the ground doing the work. That's not what I'm criticizing. But the failure, that was a debacle. And I think Putin looked at that, and I think when they open up the Politburo archives in like 50 years and they look at their National Security Council notes, they're going to go like, wow, Putin saw that as weakness in the United States and saw that as a green light to go after. We saw it in Taiwan.
So why did Russia go into Ukraine?
I have no idea.
I think I know. I think they want Sevastopol as a trade port. When the Soviet Union broke up, they took it and they gave Black Sea access, like Mediterranean access to Ukraine. They wanted to keep Russia from becoming a global economic hegemon. But now he's trying to take Sevastopol on the freeways, East 97 and 105 that go down in there.
I watched the morning shows, you know, where they had all the retired generals. They had Barry McCaffrey and Admiral Stavridis and all these people.
Used to watch that all the time.
Right, man. And you remember last year at this time, they're like, Kyiv will fall in 72 hours.
Yep.
And then, of course, today they're like, oh, the freedom fighters of Ukraine. The reason I bring this up is anybody that predicts what's going to happen over there, I have no confidence in.
I agree. I think everything we've been told from everybody, you know, is just been wrong about what the trajectory of the war is going to be.
Do you think it would be
I think Russia obviously has its interests with Ukraine. So it's not fair to completely blame the U.S. operations for provoking Russia. Russia wanted, like Ian was saying, Sevastopol, Crimea,
Sure.
Donbass region, regardless of what the U.S. was doing. What ultimately happens is, I think Vladimir Putin laments the fact that they lost Ukraine with the fall of the Soviet Union. They want access. They have operations in Crimea. And then both the U.S. and Russia are engaged in influence operations in Ukraine in an attempt to win the favor of the Ukrainian people. But it seemed like, for the most part, the majority of the country was moving towards NATO and the EU. Even when I went there, that's what I saw. The people in Kiev were like, we want access to Europe. Europe was wealth for these people. They said, if we get Schengen zone, if Ukraine becomes a part of the Schengen zone and we can freely travel and work, our standard of living is going to skyrocket. Our wealth will skyrocket. Russia's offer with the Federal Trade Union was not that appealing to them. Of course, you get the ousting of Yanukovych, U.S. involvement to whatever degree. You've got Joe Biden, Burisma, energy operations competing with Russia. Both the U.S., NATO, Russia have heavy interests. Russia moved in because the U.S. was winning the conflict. There was a Cold War with Ukraine before there was a hot war. Russia turned it hot because the U.S. was winning it.
Well, they annexed Crimea, which was potentially could have went hot, but they didn't. They just let it happen, and then because of the influence,
the annexation of Crimea was the line between cold and hot. They brought in military into the region. There was not a lot of fighting, but they took that land. Then it went hot in the Donbass region. Donald Trump gets elected. Everything kind of simmers a little bit down.
Do you think if we would have reacted differently to this seizure of Crimea in 2014, that this situation would be different?
In what way? What do you mean?
Because Obama, we didn't do jack. We let him take it, and you know, maybe we were too concerned about something. I don't know.
The U.S. should have declared a no-fly zone. Well, so there's a couple ways I look at this. First, my principal morals are, if they cannot justify to me and the American people why we should be spending money and being involved in Ukraine, it shouldn't happen in the first place. Strategically, Obama should have declared a no-fly zone instantly over the Donbass region and Ukraine, which Ukrainians would have supported outright, and that would have prevented Russia from aggressing in the first place, because that would be a direct act of war against the United States. When it came to their buildup on the border, a year ago, before the invasion, I and many other people were like, the U.S. strategically should have declared a no-fly zone before Russia invaded, because then Russia's move would have been an act of aggression against the U.S., putting them in a very difficult position. Instead, we have a Biden who sits on his hands and does nothing, and the military apparatus around him. Russia moves in, and now our hands are tied. Now we're sinking money into a toilet. And it's just, like you were saying, what, more money than Afghanistan?
Yeah, so far. I saw 20 years of Afghanistan, too.
In 20 years of Vietnam, even. Crystal Ball was talking about this. It is a strategic nightmare. So this is a component of why I'm like, we should not be in this conflict. We should have nothing to do with it. We have, Ian, we surrender Afghanistan. It's a disaster. You mentioned, Putin sees this and he's like, wow, now's my opportunity. It has been just, look, man, You know, everybody knows I've been playing poker recently. You get a bad hand, you fold. If you don't, and the most important lesson you can learn is if you're the 8th best player in the world and you're at a table with the 7 other best players in the world, you're the sucker, get out. The U.S. should have seen everything that was going on and been like, you know, we're really bad at this and we're going to lose. Cut your losses, leave. We shouldn't be involved.
Chris, I want to ask you about, so I understand that the arguments that people make for helping out in Ukraine, frequently there's something along the lines of, well, you know, if you don't stop Putin, he's going to keep going and he's going to try to bring back the Soviet Union, et cetera. And those arguments to me are not compelling at all. And that's just because NATO. What's wrong with waiting for NATO to actually get involved until there's an actual threat to a NATO country? There was a reason why Ukraine is not in NATO now. And this is literally it, if I understand correctly. NATO didn't want Ukraine because they didn't want to directly have a conflict with Russia. And that's what we're getting at right now. If we continue to support Ukraine, at some point there's going to be dead NATO soldiers. And then there's going to be people talking about Article 5. And I don't see the off-ramp at all right now. I don't see how we avoid that because we keep committing to indefinite support until until Russia's beaten, and the realistic perspective is Russia is only going to be beaten if they choose to be, because they do have nuclear weapons. So I don't see where the off-ramp is with us supporting Ukraine the way that we are. What are your thoughts on that?
Hey, NATO, President Trump is right. What, can't freeload anymore. Good on NATO. Good on NATO for all those years after World War II where we bankrolled their security. Cold War's been over, what, 30 years?
Some say it never ended, just switched to China.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, good point. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, we could go someplace on that one.
Yep.
Talking about the military-industrial complex. So the Poles, when I went over there, I was over there 6, 8 weeks after the war started. The Poles went to this university, right, and gave a lecture to some international affairs class. It was interesting. The leadership of the university got a sidebar with me and said, should we evacuate and set up an alternate university? I said, why? They're like, because we think we're going to get a nuclear weapon strikes coming in. They were petrified. Now, your point about, you think Putin would make a move on a NATO country?
I don't, and that's why I think that,
so
that's
either.
why I don't think that we shouldn't.
That's existential for him.
Exactly, and that's why I think that as harsh as this is going to sound to a lot of people, we should keep our nose out of Ukraine, because I don't see Putin actually making an attack on a NATO country, because that just I don't see any benefit for Putin to do that. To actually try to engage in a war with NATO.
If there's a lack of NATO unity, then I could see him invading Estonia or Latvia and then posing the question to the American public and Europeans, are you guys really willing to fight and die for Estonia? Because that's what a lot of people in the United States would be asking. Yep. And if you guys asked me that, I don't know how I would respond. Do you think American soldiers should die in Estonia if Russia invades?
That's the question. You just nailed it. I know you.
They died in Germany.
I don't. Yeah. So, I don't know if the American public is ready to answer that question. If Russia was willing to take it there, Chris, what do you?
Good.
Oh no, you guys go ahead.
You're the secretary. Yeah. Former.
I would not die for the Estonian people at the moment. Thank you. I love you people. I love you, and I'm here for you in my own way. I think just not shooting people for you. But I think Putin's disincentivized of attacking NATO countries because he needs Turkey.
He does. Let's be clear. He does not have the ass right now. Like there is this great statement that I heard when we were losing in Iraq the second or third time. I can't remember what time it was. Great powers should never fight small wars because one of two things happens. One is they win and they look like a complete bully and everybody gangs up against them. Or two, they don't win and you show your
Blood in the water.
You're feckless. Everybody goes, wow, that's a paper tiger. I don't think Russia, they do not have the combat capability right now to do anything. I mean, so why
they got them nukes though?
Oh, so right. So I'm all about strategic defense initiative. You know, Star Wars. Like we were talking technology earlier, dude. I think we have the ability to put that. You know, we were talking earlier about putting the bubble around. I think we can do that. So
the
I'm like,
strategic
fine.
defense initiative,
just like
Star
deflect.
Wars. Remember, everybody made fun of Reagan. Like, this guy's a complete lunatic.
The problem with defensive bubbles is things that come straight down pierce the bubble, or a better chance to pierce the bubble, like hypersonic straight down.
But
would
the
be hard
real
to stop.
the real issue is Russia probably has invested in cyber warfare more than anything else.
Well, information operations too, with their bot farms and everything.
Yes. But I think the bigger issue is Russia probably has the capability of blowing up an oil refinery in a minute. It's the cybersecurity is nigh impossible. It's very easy to attack. It's extremely difficult to defend. You have so many attack vectors throughout the country. You won't even. It's impossible to shore up defenses because you don't know which of the tens of thousands of industrial plants to protect. And you can start by trying to protect all of them, update every single one. But even when you do, eventually someone will find a new exploit. The military, the Russians will every single day be trying to find a way to break through, and they will find it. And then they can do who knows what.
What do you think ethically about a general armistice with the Russian army, like in eastern Ukraine? Because what I think is happening is they want that Black Sea port. They want to be able to ship into the Mediterranean and sell steel to the world. The United States, everybody. And that means an alliance with Turkey, which means an alliance with NATO. So the end goal seems very positive for everyone involved, except for the fact that the Ukrainians would have to cede the eastern territory, the Donbass or the southern Donbass. But do you think that that's a reasonable de-escalation tactic?
You're triggering me, and this is where the American hypocrisy bothers me, that there's this idea that somehow we can dictate terms. The Ukrainians get to decide, and the Russians get to decide.
And we can stop giving them money.
And you know what? If we stop giving them money and we stop giving them stuff, they're not going to stop fighting. And it's going to go old school. So
they'll stop fighting when they get flattened and there's no one left to fight.
Ukrainians have shown that the biggest change I saw from when you were over there, right? It used to be about 50-50 split. 50% were like, let's go Russia way. 50%, let's go to the West.
Leaning Western, but
dude, last time over there, man, the hatred. I'm sure it's like 90%. Yeah, the Donbass and all that. They're obviously that's the trade space. We all know that. But my point is, we're not going to get to decide that. The Ukrainians get to decide that. And how do wars win? Or how do wars end? Exhaustion. And those two countries don't seem to be exhausted yet. So
yeah, but Ukraine is... Look, Russia's got its problems militaristically, but Ukraine's only able to do anything because of NATO support. If we were not providing them with weapons and intelligence, they would have been flattened in a week. Russia.
I totally disagree. The way that, and that's part of my book actually, is we talked about how we should need to fight differently. When the Russians came down from the north to try to capture Kyiv, and what did you have? You had like babushka women out there, slapping plastic explosives on freaking Russian tanks. You had little hunter-killer teams with their pickup truck and anti-tank guns and stuff. So that's my point, is they're absolutely capable of defending themselves. Even if we pulled everything out, it'd get a lot worse. Don't get me wrong.
That's a great argument for us to pull everything out and back off and because if that's the case, then I see no reason for us to be wasting time.
Why it's not,
what are we gaining from it? What do we get? Why?
I want to ask you that. Like, why would we bail? Why would we pull out when we can fix the Russian war machine in a interminable war?
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.